Hey, this is Professor Triplet, and now we're going to go ahead and post-process these pictures. So I'm in Photoshop, and I'm going to get started. So let's go to it. I've already imported all my pictures, and I want to go ahead and start opening them. So first thing I'm going to do is go File, Open As, or you can just hit Control O, and I'm pasting in the location where they are in my folder. And so here we go, and I can see all of those. That's good. And I'm just going to go ahead and select. Looks like it's only letting me select them one at a time. That's fine. Okay. Let's try that one more time. I'm actually dragging in the folder. Okay, that was really strange because it's a JPEG and it wouldn't open it. I think it thought it was a Photoshop file. Let me see if I do JPEG and then open it. Okay, that worked. Not sure why I was trying to read a Photoshop file, but I had to change it to JPEG. So here you go. This is what our photos look like. Now, let's go ahead and set this up, and we're going to make life easier on ourselves. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually line these all up into one document. I'm going to make sure that they're all nice and straight so you can see this one's tilted a little bit. We're going to straighten them out. We are going to line them all up next to each other, and then we're going to export one huge photo, JPEG photo, that we're going to bring into Maya, and we're going to put it on a huge plane, and then we're going to actually cut the plane up and then set up our reference views. Okay, so it's you'll see it's just less steps than like having to import like every single picture and whatnot. So the first thing we have to figure out before I do anything else is I want to figure out what size are my pictures, because that's going to dictate a little bit about how big I want to make my document that I'm going to pull these into. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit Control Alt I, and that's going to bring up my image size. You can also go into image and image size right here. You can see it's the same hotkeys. So we have a width of 3492 and a height of 4656. Okay. So for right now, to get all these lined up, I think what I'm going to do is, it actually really doesn't matter if I want to resize them, which I'm eventually going to do. So I'm not going to size them to this, but I just want to make you aware you can check and look at your image size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new document. So Control N to make a new document. The width, I'm thinking maybe 8196. And height, I'm going to guess at like a 2048. We'll see if this works. So let me just, if you haven't noticed, I'm using an older version of Photoshop. Yours might look a little bit different. This is CS5. I try not to have to pay the CC, cloud prices. So I bought Photoshop before they started the cloud thing. And I just keep using it because most of the tools I use, I don't need the new Photoshop. So everything that we do in here should be pretty much the same. You might just see slight differences. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to pull the front one out first. So I'm just dragging those tabs off and floating them in the window. And what I want to do is select this layer, and I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to drag it into my document, and you're going to see that it's going to go right in the middle, and that's important. So we'll just close that. I'm going to do the same thing with a Shift, drag it into the document. Now what's happening is when I'm holding Shift centers the file or the image into the middle of the next document that you drag it into. So that's important. We want to keep that going. So I'm going to go ahead and just open the rest of these. Open. And go like that. And they're pretty big, so let's open it a little bit slow. And we'll get the next one. Same scenario. Shift. Oops, I dragged it into the wrong thing. I'm going to drag it into here. Okay, there we go. Oh, and actually, I should label these as I go along. So front. This is my 3/4 reference. So I usually just use 3Q. As long as you know what it means, right? I'm going to hold Shift, drag this in. This will be, if we were looking at it, it would be the, I guess that would be the left side or the right side. It's the right side. Right side. Close that. This would be back. So let's drag that off. Shift, drag in, and this will be back. I had a scenario once where I was working on a game team, and I got handed a Photoshop file, and it was a super messy file. There was probably 75 to 100 layers in there, and I was looking for one particular layer that I had to pull a graphic out of. My team lead said, you need to pull this graphic out of here and get it. And so I was talking to the artist who made the file, and I said, hey, can you tell me what layer that's on? Well, all of his layers were named layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. He never named any of his layers for 100 layers. So needless to say, I was a bit upset, and he turned around and said, figure it out, find it yourself, and walked out of my room. So needless to say, I had a bad taste in my mouth from working with that guy. You know, I would just say anybody who's making their Photoshop files, every so often, stop, name your stuff. It'll make you happier later, and it'll also make your coworkers happier in the future. So, all right, there we go. Now everything's in there. All right, so this is important that I got them all in the middle. They're all the same size right now. I'm going to hold Shift. See, I have the top one selected here, and I'm going to hold Shift. If you don't have the top one selected, hold Shift, get all of them. And then if you hit Control T on your keyboard, it should be free transform. If you're not seeing this transform, I don't know what you call these, border, you may have to hit Control H, which hides it and brings it back out. Okay, so all right, if you look at my widget, or you look at my cursor, as I roll it around this outside border, it changes. And when I get to this point right here, this corner, this allows me to drag these and basically scale it. Now I just hit Control Z to undo that. What I want to do is I want to scale everything towards the center of this document, and I want it to stay uniform. So in other words, I want this, you can actually click on this chain link here and that'll keep it uniform, but you don't actually have to. So I'm going to unclick it. I'm going to show you a trick, and that trick is you just hit Shift and Alt at the same time, and then you start dragging. And what it does is it shrinks it towards the center. So we'll bring it into, I'm going to guess right there is probably going to be fine. That might even be too small. Let me go ahead and actually, so what I want to do is, let me undo that. I'm going to go ahead and actually hide the bottom one, and we'll get one of the side ones, and that's fine. All right, we'll put this side one on top for right now so we can see it. All right, so let's do the same scenario. I'm just grabbing all of them, Control T to shrink them, and then shrink this down till I can get the whole object into the scene. Okay, so that's pretty good. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. If you hold Control and hit your arrow keys, actually when it's in the, I'm sorry, you can just hit your arrow keys. If you're already in the Move tool or in the Transform tool, you can just hit your arrow keys to adjust where this is. And then you just hit this check mark here to complete it, or you can hit Enter on your keyboard. Either one works. All right, so now we have basically all of these should be somewhat lined up well. And they should all be basically the same size because I took them from the same distance for the most part. Okay, so let's go ahead and just decide how we want to do this. I usually just start with the front, and then I'm just going to hold Control on my keyboard, and you can see what Control does is it actually activates your Move tool, but temporarily. So if I want to move my front layer out, I hold control and I can start moving it. But you can see what happens is if I start moving that, it kind of goes everywhere. So if I want to move it just in a straight line, I hold control and shift together. And then I just start moving it in the straight direction that I want to, and it'll actually stay perfectly aligned. And I'm just going to move it there. And it doesn't feel like it was snapping. But that, you know what? I know why it's not snapping, because it's not snapping because I still have there's basically pixels outside of this range, so it doesn't want to snap yet. So we'll get that figured out in a minute. So that was the front. The 3Q for right now I'm going to hide. The right side I'm going to click on here, hold Control and Shift. Actually, I'm already in my Move tool, so you just hold Shift then. And let's just move that out. And now that one did snap, so that worked right. Okay, so let's just hide. Actually, we're going to keep that out. Let's go the back. I think I'm going to move the back all the way off to this side for now. The top, I will move that over here. So, and then the bottom. Okay, so what you can see right now is I don't have enough room in here for all of these. And that's okay. So we can change the size of this canvas. And I kind of expected that this could happen, and it's not really that big of a problem. We just go to Image, go to Canvas Size, and change this to pixels because we're working in pixels. And I'm just going to change this to like 1200. I'm sorry, 12,000, and hit Enter. Okay. So that should give us enough room to add in a few more things. Let me just go back to the front. Let's move that over. Let's go to the right side. Let's move that. The back will move this way, and top, we'll put that there. And bottom, let's move the bottom to the top. And actually, I think I'm going to take. Now, here's another trick, just so you know. If you right-click over any kind of pixel, it will say any of the pixels that are underneath where you right click. So left side is what I want. So instead of me coming into my my layers here, I can just right click and go, okay, yeah, left side, that's what I want. So move that there, and that looks like we're, oops, let me redo that. Move that there. Looks like we're pretty good now. And let's bottom, let's move that there. Okay, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the bottom and the top, and I'm going to move these all the way over to the side. I don't know why it doesn't really matter, because in the end, these don't really need to be organized because I'm going to cut them up. But I just, in my own head, I want to have them organized. So, organized in the Photoshop file at least, that is. So that's why I'm doing this. It's just my own neuroses, if you will. So where's the other one? Bottom. There we go. Okay. The 3/4 is not super important right now. Actually, I don't even really need the 3/4 for this. I pull it in case I wanted to just make an extra section for it. But the 3/4 is more just for my own personal reference. So I could always look at that outside of Maya. I don't actually need that to be in an image plane. Okay. So now, now that I've got these all separated, we can go ahead and start lining these up and making sure they're nice and straight. So this is where you're going to need your rulers, and you may notice I already have my rulers out. And if you don't have your rulers out, just hit Control R on your keyboard, and that should bring your rulers out. And you know what? I'm actually not sure where you pull those out from your menu. So you may have to look that up if Control R is not working for you. I know in the older Photoshop, and this one, it's Control R brings it out. But what your rulers allow you to do is they're going to allow you to go ahead and you click inside the ruler here, just left click and drag down, and you can actually pull out a guide. So in other words, I can pull this out, and then I can pull this out. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually looking at the side view right here. So right here and right here. Okay, so that one's a little bit off, but you don't have to be too anal about this. It's just it's got to be pretty close, but it doesn't have to necessarily be 100% perfect. So now that I've done that, I can go to my left side and I can just nudge by using my arrow keys. I can nudge this up and maybe nudge it down a couple. So you can see it's just a tiny bit different than this one, and I wouldn't actually worry that much about that. We just want to get it pretty close. And in some cases, like the back and the front, they actually are pretty far off. And that's okay too. It's not the end of the world. What it has to do with is it's the perspective distortion, because in the camera view, this metal piece gets closer to the lens, so it's kind of messing with the perspective. So don't sweat that stuff too hard. Just get it pretty close. Like if you line the bottom up, you could probably even see, like, pull another guide out. You can see that like these should still all line up pretty close. You can see like right here at this green edge right here, they're all lining up. Now, of course, the top, the bottom, and the front, you're not going to be able to see that in. So that's okay though. We just wanted a reference for what those look like. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now let's go ahead and make sure the verticality is good. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull some vertical lines out and see if you can see like how this one's tilted a little bit. Let's go over here. Look at that one. That one's pretty good, actually. A little bit better. And again, this is not necessarily the end of the world either. But when you're building your object, you're going to just kind of build it like everything was square and straight up and down. Don't worry if it's tilted a little bit in an object like this. I mean, if you're doing like something that's got more cartoony character to it or something, and it needs to be built like that, then you would do is build it straight up and down, and then later use like a deformer to tilt it, or use like a lattice box to tilt it. But you don't want to like tilt it right in the beginning, because then it's really hard to work with a lot of this stuff. So you kind of want to keep it more orthographic, if you will. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I think I'll adjust this one. So I'm just gonna go to my move tool, hit V, and then I can right click and go right side and just choose right side. So now that layer is selected. And if I hit Control T again, so my free transform, you can see that I get this this little box up here. And what I want to do is grab the little middle icon here, like the crosshairs in the middle, and I'm going to just move that right down here to where these two lines are crossing as my center point. And now I can rotate. So if you get close to the corners, you can see like the rotation will come out. And if you go right over the corners, it's the sizing. But I can go ahead and just rotate this a little bit, like so. That's a lot more straight. So just accept it, and that's good. And I'm just going to go ahead and nudge it over a little bit so it's nice and centered. Okay, same thing here. This one's not too bad, but if I want to be, you know, a little bit anal about it, I could go and just do the same thing. I'm just going to do it faster now. So I'm just going to go ahead and just rotate that just a tiny bit. It's pretty good. Not a big deal. This one I definitely want to fix. So let's put that there. Let's go ahead and that looks pretty good. That's pretty straight. Okay, and then if you want it centered in there, you could just nudge it over like so. So what was happening was my camera was adjusting a little bit. I didn't have it on a tripod. I was hand holding it. So I was getting a little bit of, you know, difference in each one of the pictures. But since I did hold my camera against the edge of the table, I was getting it pretty close every time. It was almost the same every time, but not perfect. These I'm not going to worry about. They're fine. I mean, if you really wanted to, you can see that the text isn't straight here, but that's actually because the bottom here actually can rotate. So you can see that the body is pretty straight, but it's just the text, or the bottom piece is just rotated a little bit. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. Okay, this is a good time to save. So let's go ahead and save this file out. And we will call this, let's see, lamp ref, and then I'm going to actually put LGV20, LGV20, so I know, because I have lamp references that I made already from a DSLR, so I don't want to get them confused. And I'll go ahead and save these into my proper folder. And that's going to be in There we go. And we'll put it in week 7. And okay, so that's a big file. Let's see what size we have right now. 1200 by 2048. Okay, that's easy to remember though. All right, considering the fact, oops, that was a mistake. Considering the fact that we don't need this extra space here, I'm gonna go ahead and I will crop that off. So I'm gonna just go ahead and go to C on my keyboard, and that's your crop tool, and I'm just gonna hit enter. And now I'm going to look at my size again because I know it's going to be something weird and different. And actually, I'm going to bring out a notepad, and I'm just going to copy that and paste that into my notepad for right now. So there we go. I'll move it off screen and hit OK. So I didn't really do anything different. It's just the size is all good now. All right, so now I know they're lined up. Now I know that reference-wise, they should be able to line up within Maya pretty well. The next thing I want to do is, I usually do this, oops, sorry. I usually do this as a little guide for myself, is I'll go ahead and just drop like an edge in here, or I should say a guide in here. And then I'm going to make an extra layer. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little line down that. And actually what I'll do is, there's probably a better way to do this. So if you want to make a line that kind of just like surrounds this, and then you want to make sure that each one of your pictures, basically, let me explain what I'm doing. I apologize. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make a spot where I'm going to cut, and I want those cuts to be fairly even. But it's really not 100% necessary. I just like to know where to cut, so I can just basically, let's make my pixels a little bit bigger here, and I'll make it black. So I'll just go like this. And this is just for me. I mean, if you're watching this tutorial, you don't necessarily have to do this. So the way I just duplicated that was I hold Alt, and you can drag and duplicate your layer, whatever's on your layer. Now if I hold Alt and Shift at the same time, Shift works the same, whereas it's going to keep it in a straight line. So I just go ahead and move it over, nudge it a little bit like so. In this case, I think what I should really be doing is taking this left side and just nudging that over as well, so it's nice and centered. There we go. Okay, and so we'll go back to this, and this will be where I make my cuts. All right, that is it. Now I'm going to go ahead and save a JPEG off. The reason why I don't like taking a Photoshop file into Maya is you can, but this particular Photoshop file is huge. So it's more memory in the system, and I'd just rather not do that. So I just save a JPEG. JPEG is compressed. For a reference, a JPEG is fine. If you were doing like textures and you were kind of getting textures off of this object, you wouldn't want to use a JPEG. You'd want to use a better quality, or whatever your original photo was. But the JPEG is going to, each time you save it out, it's going to degrade a little bit. So definitely don't want to keep degrading something that you need to be really, really tight. Okay, so we've got all this going on, and if you remember, I went ahead and copied this number here. I know my second number is 2048, and that's going to be important when we get into Maya.